The sensation of death was far less dramatic than the poets had promised. There was no tunnel of light, no cinematic reel of memories, and certainly no warm embrace of ancestors. There was only the violent, ear-splitting screech of tearing metal, the smell of burnt rubber and spilled gasoline, and then nothing. Or at least, there should have been nothing. Arthur Sterling, the man who had turned a failing family logistics firm into a global shipping empire by the age of 26, the man Forbes had dubbed the Ice King of Commerce, remembered the last moments of his life with clinical precision. He remembered the business gala in downtown Manhattan, a tedious affair of lukewarm champagne and overheated egos. He remembered checking his watch, calculating the opportunity cost of every minute spent exchanging pleasantries with senators he had already bought and rivals he had already buried. He remembered the drive home. It was raining, a heavy, relentless downpour that blurred the city lights into streaks of neon. He was driving the Maybach himself. He had dismissed the chauffeur earlier, preferring the illusion of control that handling the wheel gave him. In the passenger seat sat his wife. His wife. Arthur frowned, a phantom sensation in a mind that felt groggy and thick. What was her name? Clara? Sarah? No, Sophie. It was Sophie. They had been married for 2 years. An arrangement, of course. His grandfather, the old patriarch whose approval Arthur had chased like a greyhound chasing a mechanical rabbit, had insisted. The Sterlings needed land rights in the Pacific Northwest. Sophie's father, a minor but landed gentleman, needed cash flow. It was a transaction, a merger. Sophie was quiet. She was always quiet. In 2 years, Arthur doubted they had exchanged more than 100 sentences that weren't related to household logistics or mandatory social appearances. She wasn't from his world. She didn't understand the market, the ruthless efficiency required to stay on top. She was just there, a soft, silent presence in his cold, architectural house. In that car, moments before the end, the silence had been suffocating. He remembered glancing at her. She was looking out the window, her reflection ghosting against the dark glass. She looked sad, or maybe just tired. He hadn't asked. He never asked. Then came the headlights. A semi-truck, hydroplaning across the center divider. It was massive, a wall of steel and blinding light. Arthur had calculated the trajectory in a split second. He knew, with the detached certainty of an actuary, that there was no escape. He remembered swerving, not to save himself, but instinctively turning the driver's side, his side, toward the impact. A final, illogical act of chivalry? Or just reflex? The impact shattered the world. And now, Arthur Sterling opened his eyes. He inhaled sharply, his lungs expanding with a clean, desperate breath. He waited for the agony. He waited for the crushing weight of a steering column against his chest, the wet warmth of blood, the screaming of sirens. But there was only silence, and the soft, rhythmic hum of central air conditioning. Arthur stared up at the ceiling. It was not the exposed industrial concrete of his penthouse master suite. It was white, pristine, crown-molded, intricate white plaster with a chandelier that looked like a frozen explosion of crystal hanging directly above him. He blinked. Once. Twice. Alive, he whispered. His voice sounded wrong. Arthur sat up, the movement fluid and painless. Too fluid. His back, usually stiff from 18-hour days hunched over blueprints and contracts, felt limber. He looked at his hands. They were his hands, and yet they weren't. The fingers were long and slender, manicured to perfection. The callus on his right middle finger, a permanent mark from his fountain pen, his badge of office, was gone. The skin was pale, soft, untouched by hard labor or stress. He threw the covers off. Silk. High thread count, likely Egyptian cotton. But the color? Pink. Arthur muttered, his voice pitching up in disbelief. Pastel pink sheets. He swung his legs over the edge of the bed. The room was expansive, larger than his previous bedroom, but decorated with a taste that made his minimalist soul recoil. Velvet drapes. A chaise lounge that looked purely decorative. Art that was expensive but lacked substance. This wasn't a hospital. This wasn't the afterlife. This was a bedroom in a mansion that screamed nouveau riche desperation. He stood up. His center of gravity felt slightly different, but the body responded instantly. He felt lighter, weaker, but undeniably healthy. He needed information. He needed a mirror. He spotted a door to his left, slightly ajar, revealing polished marble tile. He walked toward it, his steps silent on the thick carpet. Inside, the bathroom was a temple of vanity. Gold fixtures, a bathtub large enough to swim in, and a wall-to-wall mirror above the double vanity. Arthur gripped the edge of the sink, the cold marble grounding him, and lifted his head. The face staring back at him was not Arthur Sterling. Arthur Sterling had a sharp jaw, eyes like cold flint, and a perpetual furrow in his brow. He looked like a shark in a tailored suit. The man in the mirror was pretty. That was the only word for it. Soft jawline, large, doe-like brown eyes, sweeping lashes, and hair that fell in perfectly tousled waves. It was a face made for magazine covers, for boy bands, for romantic comedies where the protagonist chases the girl through an airport. It was a face that practically begged for approval. "Who are you?" Arthur hissed at the reflection. He leaned in closer, inspecting the unfamiliar features. There was a nagging familiarity. He had seen this face before, not in a mirror, but in an illustration, a description. His mind raced, cataloging the last few weeks of his life. The merger with the textile group, the acquisition of the shipping lanes, the book. He froze. His executive assistant, Miss Perkins. She was a capable woman, but she had a vice, trashy romance novels. She would leave them in the break room, or tucked into her bag during meetings. Last week, during a flight to Tokyo, Arthur had found one left on his private jet seat. Bored, stripped of his Wi-Fi due to a satellite malfunction, he had picked it up. The CEO's reluctant groom. It was a generic, melodramatic CEO romance. But with a twist, the CEO was a woman, a cold, ruthless tyrant of industry named Seraphina Vance. And her husband? A weak, sniveling, love-struck fool who had been forced into the marriage by his debt-ridden family. A simp, as the internet would call him. A man who cooked her meals she never ate, who waited up for her while she was out with business partners, who tolerated her coldness because he loved her. The husband's name was Julian. Arthur whispered, horror dawning on him. Julian Thorne. He looked back at the mirror. The description was perfect. The doe eyes, the soft features, the look of perpetual pathetic devotion. He was Julian Thorne. He was the cannon fodder character. The obstacle. In the book, Julian dies. He dies of a broken heart, or a pill overdose. The text was vague and poorly written, clearing the way for Seraphina to be with her true love, the ruggedly handsome rival billionaire. Arthur gripped the sink until his knuckles, these soft, pathetic knuckles, turned white. "I am a simp," he stated, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. He closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. Panic is inefficient, he told himself. It was his mantra. Panic burns energy. Analysis yields solutions. He opened his eyes. The panic was gone, replaced by the cold, calculating glint of Arthur Sterling, now hiding behind the soft brown eyes of Julian Thorne. He was alive. That was the primary variable. He was in a new environment. That was the situation. He had retained his memories, his intellect, and his experience. That was his asset. He checked the digital clock built into the mirror. 7 a.m. Tuesday. A memory, not his own, flickered in his mind. A residue of the original Julian. Today was the day. In the novel, this was the turning point. Chapter 5. The morning Seraphina Vance hands him the divorce papers. The morning Julian falls to his knees, weeping, begging her to stay, promising to change, promising to be better, humiliating himself one last time before his eventual exit from the plot. Arthur straightened his spine. He rolled his neck, feeling a satisfying pop. Divorce, he mused, testing the word. In his previous life, he had avoided divorce because marriage was a contract, and he didn't break contracts unless the penalty clause was favorable. But here, in this body, he looked at the reflection one last time. He saw the potential there. The bone structure was good, just hidden by a lack of confidence and terrible posture. The eyes were intelligent, if he stopped widening them like a frightened deer. Divorce, he said again, this time with a faint, predatory smile. Perfect. A clean break. Liquidated assets. Freedom from a narrative that demanded his humiliation. If this Seraphina Vance wanted to cut him loose, he would make sure the severance package was substantial. He turned away from the mirror. He stripped off the silk pajamas, ridiculous things, and walked into the walk-in closet. It was filled with clothes that made him wince. Pastels, soft knits, cardigans, He pushed through the racks of offensive clothing until he found something serviceable. A white dress shirt. It was a bit too loose, a bit too romantic in its cut, but it was crisp. He found a pair of black slacks that fit well enough. He ignored the velvet loafers and found a pair of simple leather shoes. He dressed with mechanical efficiency. He buttoned the shirt, leaving the top collar open. He didn't try to soften his appearance. He slicked the wavy hair back, imposing order on the chaos. He caught his reflection in the full-length mirror on the closet door. He didn't look like Julian the Simp anymore. He looked like a young executive who had just woken up to find he owned the bank. Right? Arthur said to the empty room. Let's go negotiate. He walked out of the bedroom, his stride long and purposeful. The hallway was grand, lined with portraits of the Vance family ancestors, stern men and women who looked like they chewed gravel for breakfast. He ignored them. He navigated the house by instinct, Julian's memories guiding his feet, Arthur's mind analyzing the architecture. Load-bearing walls there. Inefficient lighting design. That vase is a fake. He reached the top of the grand staircase. Below, the sprawling open-concept living room waited. He paused at the top step, his hand resting lightly on the banister. From here, he could see the living room. He could see the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the manicured gardens. He could see the expensive, uncomfortable modern furniture. And he could see her. Seraphina Vance was sitting on the sofa, her back to him. Her posture was rigid, perfect. A shark in a power suit. On the coffee table in front of her sat a manila envelope. The papers. Arthur Sterling took a breath, adjusted his cuffs, and began to descend the stairs. The mahogany railing felt cool and solid under my hand, a stark contrast to the flimsy, chaotic state of my current existence. As I took the first step down the grand, sweeping staircase, my mind shifted gears. I wasn't just walking down to breakfast. I was walking into a boardroom negotiation. The stakes weren't stock prices or mergers this time. The stake was my life. I knew how the CEO's reluctant groom ended. Julian Thorne, the pathetic creature whose skin I was now wearing, would refuse the divorce. He would cry. He would beg. He would cling to Seraphina Vance like a parasite, fueled by a misguided, obsessive love that the author mistook for romance. And for his trouble, the plot would kill him. A broken heart, a convenient overdose, an accident. The method didn't matter. The narrative required his removal so Seraphina could end up with the male lead. I am not going to die for a plot device, I thought, my leather shoes making no sound on the plush runner. Step, step, step. The solution was efficient, logical, and staring me right in the face. The divorce papers waiting on that coffee table weren't a tragedy. They were my exit strategy. $10 million. That was the alimony settlement mentioned in Chapter 5. I remembered reading it on the plane, scoffing at the paltry sum compared to the billions Seraphina was worth. But now, 10 million was a lifeline. It was seed capital. I'll sign, I decided, a sense of calm settling over me. Asterisk, I won't even read the fine print. I'll take the check, pack a single bag, and leave this city by noon. I'll go to the countryside. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere with zero reception and absolutely no socialites. Asterisk. I could see it. A small estate. Maybe a vineyard or an orchard. I had spent my first life conquering the global market, sleeping 4 hours a night, fueling my body with caffeine and ambition. And where had it gotten me? A wet grave on a highway. No more, I thought. Asterisk, I'll live a slow life. I'll buy a tractor. I'll learn to bake bread. I will retire at the age of 25 and never look at a spreadsheet again. Asterisk. The thought of the crash brought a sudden, sharp pang to my chest. It wasn't the pain of dying. That had been instantaneous. It was the memory of the passenger seat. Sophie. My grip on the banister tightened. In my previous life, Sophie had been a fixture in my home, like a piece of expensive, quiet art. We had been married for 2 years, and I realized with a jolting nausea that I didn't know her favorite color. I didn't know if she liked jazz or pop. I didn't know if she preferred coffee or tea. I had been so cold, so professional. I treated our marriage like a holding company, stable, low maintenance, devoid of passion. I never even touched her, I thought, the regret bitter and acrid in my throat. Asterisk, not really. A handshake at the altar. A chaste peck on the cheek for the cameras at charity galas. We slept in separate rooms. I told myself it was out of respect, but it was just indifference. I was too busy building an empire to build a life. Asterisk. I remembered the drive. Just before the headlights blinded us, I had looked at her, really looked at her. The way the streetlights played across her face, the softness of her expression. There had been a moment, just a fleeting second, where I felt a crack in the ice. A desire to reach out, to ask her how her day was, to maybe start over. I was just starting to like her. I was just starting to see her as a person, not an obligation. And then the truck hit. I'm sorry, Sophie, I thought, closing my eyes for a brief second as I descended. Asterisk, you deserve better than a husband who was married to his work. You died because of me. Because I insisted on driving. Asterisk. I opened my eyes. I was halfway down the stairs now, and the view of the living room was clear. Seraphina Vance was motionless on the couch. I focused on her. In the novel, she was described as the Ice Queen, a woman of unparalleled beauty and ruthlessness. The text hadn't lied. Even from the back, she radiated power. Her posture was impeccable, her shoulders squared, her dark hair cascading down her back like a silk waterfall. She turned her head slightly, perhaps sensing my approach, giving me a profile view of her face. I paused on the step, my analytical mind momentarily hijacked by sheer aesthetic appreciation. Sophie had been beautiful in a gentle, understated way. She was a watercolor painting, soft edges, muted tones, comforting. Seraphina Vance was an oil painting done in vivid, violent strokes. She was stunning, dangerously so. High, aristocratic cheekbones that looked sharp enough to cut glass. Lashes so long they cast shadows on her cheeks. A mouth that was currently set in a grim line, but was perfectly shaped. She was more vibrant, more imposing, more everything than Sophie had been. She is objectively more beautiful than my wife was. I admitted to myself, the thought clinical and detached. Asterisk, Sophie was a candle. This woman is a forest fire. Asterisk. Below me, Seraphina's body suddenly went rigid. It was a subtle movement, one that only someone trained in reading body language during high-stakes mergers would notice. Her shoulders locked up. Her hand, which had been resting loosely on her knee, clenched into a fist so tight her knuckles turned white. The air in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. I frowned. Had I made a noise? No, I was silent. Was she impatient? It doesn't matter, I thought, dismissing her reaction. Asterisk, she's probably just annoyed that her pathetic husband is finally awake. She wants this over with. Well, darling, you're in luck. I want it over with even more than you do. Give me the 10 million, and you'll never see my face again. Asterisk. Down on the couch, Seraphina grabbed the manila envelope. She didn't just pick it up, she snatched it with a violence that wrinkled the heavy paper. The aura radiating off her wasn't just cold anymore. It was scorching hot anger. It was palpable, rolling off her in waves, suffocating the large room. I took the final step off the stairs, my hand leaving the banister. I smoothed the front of my white shirt, composed my face into a mask of polite indifference, and walked toward the living room. I didn't know why she was suddenly furious, and frankly, I didn't care. I just wanted the pen. I walked around the coffee table and sat in the armchair opposite her. I didn't slouch. I didn't look at the floor. I crossed one leg over the other and met her gaze head-on. Her eyes were red-rimmed, as if she hadn't slept, but the fire in them was terrifying. She looked less like a CEO about to fire an employee and more like a predator deciding which limb to tear off first. Why is she so angry? I wondered, keeping my face impassive. I haven't even begged yet. Usually, the character Julian would be sobbing on the carpet by now. Maybe my silence is annoying her. Good morning, Seraphina, I said. My voice was calm, devoid of the trembling affection Julian usually used. I assume those are the divorce papers. She flinched. It was small, but I saw it. Her jaw tightened until a muscle feathered in her cheek. You? She started, her voice rasping. She cleared her throat, sounding furious. You know what they are. Excellent, I said. I leaned forward, extending my hand. Pen. She didn't move. She just stared at me, her chest heaving with shallow breaths. She's hesitating, I analyzed rapidly. Does she think I'm playing a game? Does she expect a fight? I need to reassure her that I'm leaving quietly. You don't need to worry, I said smoothly, gesturing to the envelope under her hand. I've done some thinking. We aren't compatible. You need a partner who is your equal, not whatever this has been. I'm ready to sign. I'll take the settlement mentioned in the prenup and be out of your hair by noon. I waited for the relief. I waited for the icy mask to crack into a satisfied smirk. Instead, Seraphina Vance looked as if I had just slapped her across the face. Her grip on the envelope tightened so hard her nails tore through the manila paper. "You'll take the money," she whispered, the words dripping with venom. "And leave. Just like that. Efficiency is best for both of us." I replied, confused by her intensity. She suddenly stood up, snatching the papers off the table and holding them out of my reach. Her eyes were wet, but they blazed with a fury that made no logical sense. "You think it's that easy?" she hissed. I watched, stunned, as her fingers dug into the thick packet of legal documents. With a sharp, tearing sound that echoed in the silent room, she ripped the divorce papers in half. Then she ripped them again. She let the confetti of shredded contracts flutter down onto the expensive Persian rug. "Negotiation over," she said, her voice steel. I blinked. My brain, usually a supercomputer of contingencies, stalled. This isn't in the script, I thought. Chapter 5 explicitly states she throws the papers in Julian's face. She doesn't destroy them. Is she delaying? Does she want to humiliate me publicly instead? "Seraphina," I said slowly, trying to regain control of the meeting. "I don't understand. That was the cleanest way to dissolve our assets. If you're worried about the public image." "I don't care about the image," she snapped, stepping around the coffee table. She moved with a predatory grace I hadn't seen in her before. In the book, she was cold and distant. Right now, she felt dangerously present. She stopped right in front of me, looming over the chair. I could smell her perfume, something expensive and complex, like crushed roses and ice. "You said you wanted to leave," she said, her dark eyes boring into mine. "You want to take the money and run off to the countryside? Buy a farm? Live a peaceful life?" My blood ran cold. I never said that out loud. I thought, my heart skipping a beat. Asterisk, I only thought it on the stairs. Did I mutter it? I must have mumbled. Asterisk. I might have mentioned something like that. I lied smoothly. "It seems like a sensible retirement plan. But why does it matter to you? You get your freedom. You get to be with." I paused, trying to remember the male lead's name. "With whomever you choose." Her expression twisted. For a second, she looked almost heartbroken, but it was instantly replaced by a fierce, possessive glare. "I choose," she said, leaning down until her face was inches from mine, "that you stay." "Stay," I repeated, incredulous. "As what? Your decoration? Your punching bag? The plot? I mean, the situation requires us to part ways." "We are miserable, Seraphina." "You were miserable," she corrected. "Now you seem different. Efficient. Cool." She tilted her head, studying me like a specimen under a microscope. "I like it." "She likes it." I stared at her. "The Seraphina Vance likes that I'm not groveling? That makes sense. She hates weakness. But keeping me? That's illogical. It's a sunk cost fallacy. I am not staying married to you." I stated firmly, standing up. I was taller than her, but in this body, I felt lighter, less imposing. She didn't back down an inch. "I want a divorce. I want the settlement." "No," she said simply. "You can't just say no to a divorce." "I am Seraphina Vance," she said, and the arrogance in her voice was absolute. It wasn't the petty arrogance of the novel character. It was the deep, unshakable confidence of someone who knows they own the building they're standing in. "I can do whatever I want. And I say we are not done." She poked a manicured finger against my chest, right over my heart. "You owe me, Julian," she whispered, her voice dropping to a dangerous purr. 2 years. You wasted 2 years of my life being a pathetic shadow. You don't get to just walk away the moment you decide to grow a spine. You're going to make it up to me." Make it up to her? I was baffled. This woman is insane. She's deviating completely from the narrative. Is this the butterfly effect? And if I leave anyway? I challenged. "I can walk out that door right now. I don't need the 10 million. I can make my own money." She smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was a terrifyingly beautiful smile that promised ruin. "Try it," she dared me. "I'll freeze every account you have. I'll blacklist you from every industry in the city. You won't be able to get a job flipping burgers, let alone building a business. You are my husband, Julian. You belong to me." I stared at her, mouth slightly agape. This wasn't the Ice Queen. This was a tyrant. She's trapping me, I realized with a jolt of horror. I'm not the cannon fodder anymore. I'm the prisoner. "Fine," I said, buttoning my suit jacket with a sharp snap. If she wanted war, she would get war. Arthur Sterling didn't run from a hostile takeover. You want me to stay? I'll stay. But don't expect the simp you're used to. You might regret keeping a wolf in your house, Seraphina. Her smile widened, and for a fleeting second, her eyes softened with something that looked agonizingly familiar, something that reminded me of Sophie. I'm counting on it, she said.
The view from the top floor of the Vance Corporation headquarters was breathtaking, a panorama of steel and glass that Seraphina Vance, no, Sophie, usually ignored. She sat behind the massive obsidian desk, a mountain of paperwork ignored in front of her. It had been 3 days since the incident in the living room. 3 days since she had ripped up the divorce papers and trapped Arthur Sterling in a marriage he desperately wanted to escape. Sophie closed her eyes, letting the memory of the crash wash over her. She remembered the rain. She remembered the silence in the car, the suffocating distance between her and Arthur. In her past life, she had been a quiet, dutiful wife. She came from a modest background, a family of teachers and librarians, thrust into the shark tank of the Sterling Empire by a grandfather's arrangement. She had loved Arthur from the moment she met him, his intensity, his brilliance, but she had always felt small beside him. Inferior. He was a titan, she was just. Sophie. Then the truck. She remembered the way the world spun. But mostly, she remembered the last thing Arthur did. He hadn't screamed. He hadn't braced himself. He had yanked the steering wheel to the right. He had exposed the driver's side, his side, to the impact to shield her. He had died to save her. When she woke up in this world, in the body of the villainous CEO Seraphina Vance, her first emotion was grief. Her second was confusion. And her third, when she walked into the living room that morning and looked at the man descending the stairs, was shock. She hadn't needed to guess. The moment she saw Julian Thorne, she heard a voice. Not a spoken voice, but a crisp, cold, analytical monologue echoing directly in her mind. I'll live a slow life. I'll buy a tractor. I'll learn to bake bread. It was Arthur. Unmistakably, undeniably Arthur. He was alive. Her heart had soared, ready to burst. She wanted to run to him, to hug him, to tell him it was her. But then, she heard the rest of his thoughts. Sophie was a candle. This woman is a forest fire. She is objectively more beautiful than my wife was. The anger that had flared in her then was irrational, hot, and confusing. He was complimenting her, well, her new body, but it felt like a slap in the face. It confirmed her deepest insecurity, that Arthur Sterling had never really desired Sophie. He saw Sophie as soft, muted, a background character. But Seraphina? Seraphina he respected. Seraphina he feared. And then he had tried to leave. $10 million. Divorce. Countryside. He wanted to erase their marriage, past and present, with a check. He wanted to run away and be happy without her. Over my dead body, Sophie thought, her grip tightening on her pen until it cracked. I spent 2 years being the invisible wife. Now I have the power. I have the money. I have the status he respects. And I can hear every calculation in his brilliant, icy head. He isn't going anywhere. A knock at the door broke her reverie. Come in, she said, her voice naturally adopting Seraphina's imperious tone. The door opened, and a young man walked in carrying a tray of coffee. He was handsome in a sunny, golden retriever sort of way. Blonde hair, blue eyes that sparkled with forced innocence, and a smile that was meant to melt hearts. Good morning, Miss Vance, he said, his voice dripping with syrupy warmth. I brought your macchiato. Just the way you like it. Sophie stared at him, fighting the urge to gag. This was Liam, her executive assistant. In the novel The CEO's Reluctant Groom, Liam was the male lead. He was the white moonlight, the pure, kind-hearted man Seraphina was obsessed with. The man she treated Julian like trash for. The man who would eventually destroy the Vance Empire and leave Seraphina to rot while he ran off with the heroine. Sophie looked at him and felt nothing but revulsion. He looked like a child compared to Arthur. He lacked Arthur's edge, his complexity. Liam was a cardboard cutout of a good guy. Put it down, she said coldly. Liam blinked, his smile faltering for a fraction of a second. Is something wrong, Seraphina? You seem distant lately. Usually, we have lunch together on Fridays. He took a step closer, crossing the professional boundary. In the book, Seraphina would have swooned. Sophie wanted to fire him. She wanted to call security and have him thrown out of the building. Every second he spent in her office was an insult to her loyalty to Arthur. Fire him, her instincts screamed. Get rid of the competition. But she stopped herself. If she fired Liam now, without cause, it would be a massive deviation from the plot. The world might correct itself in unpredictable ways, a butterfly effect. More importantly, Arthur was watching. Arthur was analyzing. If she suddenly fired the man Seraphina Vance was supposed to be in love with, Arthur would notice. He would overanalyze it. He might realize that she wasn't the real Seraphina. He might figure out she was a transmigrator too. And if Arthur Sterling figured out she was Sophie, he would go back to being the Ice King. He would treat her with that polite, distant respect she hated. He would close off his heart again. No. She needed him to see Seraphina, the challenge, the rival, the equal. She needed to make him fall in love with her anew, through this battle of wills, before she revealed the truth. I'm busy, Liam, Sophie said, turning her attention back to the computer screen. Cancel lunch. And don't call me Seraphina. It's Miss Vance. Liam looked stunned. He lingered for a moment, confusion clouding his sunny features, before nodding slowly. Of course, Miss Vance. He turned and left. Sophie let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. It was exhausted work, playing the villainess while managing a husband who thought he was a genius mastermind. Just you wait, Arthur, she thought, a small, sad smile touching her lips. You think you're trapped? You have no idea. I'm going to make you love me, even if I have to be the villain to do it.
The next morning, I decided that if I was going to be a prisoner, I would be a very expensive, very irritating one. I arrived at Vance Corporation at 9 a.m. sharp. The receptionist, a young woman who looked like she'd been crying over a K-drama, nearly dropped her phone when she saw me. And Mr. Thorne, she stammered. Did you bring Mrs. Vance's lunch early? In the novel, Julian Thorne was a glorified delivery boy. He spent his days hand-delivering bento boxes to a wife who threw them in the trash. No lunch, I said, adjusting my silk tie. I had raided the closet again and found a suit that wasn't pastel. It was navy blue. Acceptable. I'm here for a meeting. I didn't wait for her to call up. I walked past security, who didn't stop me, likely out of pity, and took the executive elevator to the top floor. Strategy, I thought as the numbers climbed. Seraphina wants me to make it up to her. Fine. I will insert myself into her business. I will be so incompetent, so annoying, and so disastrously helpful that she'll be begging to sign those divorce papers by Friday. I would offer terrible advice. I would rearrange the filing systems into chaos. I would accidentally delete important emails. I would be a corporate plague. The elevator door slid open. I strode down the hallway, ignoring the stares of the staff. I reached the double doors of the CEO's office and pushed them open without knocking. Seraphina was there, looking like a queen on her throne. She didn't look up from her documents. You're late, she said. I paused. I didn't know I had a start time. She finally looked up. Her eyes were dark, unreadable, and dangerously amused. You said you wanted to be useful. I have a job for you. I suppressed a smirk. Perfect. She's falling for it. Give me a task, Seraphina. Watch me burn it to the ground. I'm listening, I said, leaning against the door frame with a casual arrogance that felt good to wear again. What is it? Coffee runs. Walking your poodle. No, she said, picking up a thick file and tossing it onto the edge of her desk. It landed with a heavy thud. The West Side Development Project. It's a bleeding ulcer in my portfolio. It's 3 months behind schedule and 20% over budget. My internal calculator whirred to life automatically. West Side, that's a zoning nightmare. Probably union issues and supply chain bottlenecks. I want you to fix it, she said calmly. I stared at her. You want me, the man you think is a moron, to manage a multi-million-dollar construction project? You have 1 week to get it back on schedule, she said, returning to her typing. If you fail, I freeze your personal allowance. If you succeed, Maybe I'll consider your request for a separate bedroom. She's bluffing, I thought. She's setting me up to fail so she can humiliate me. Joke's on you, sweetheart. I could fix a supply chain issue in my sleep. But I won't. I'll make it worse. I'll cause a strike. I'll order the wrong cement. I will cost you millions. Challenge accepted, I said aloud, grabbing the file. But don't come crying to me when it gets complicated. Seraphina's lips quirked up at the corner. It was a small, almost microscopic smile. I look forward to your creative solutions, Julian, she purred. As I turned to leave, clutching the file like a weapon, I didn't see the way she looked at my back. I didn't know that she had heard every word of my sabotage plan. And I certainly didn't know that she was thinking, go ahead, Arthur. Try to fail. You're too much of a perfectionist to let a project crumble. You'll fix it because you can't help yourself. And then, you'll be mine. The West Side development site was a muddy, chaotic monument to human incompetence. I stood at the edge of the excavation pit, my polished leather shoes sinking slightly into the grime. The air smelled of wet concrete and burning diesel. Everywhere I looked, I saw money hemorrhaging. Cranes were sitting idle. 3 cement trucks were backed up in a bottleneck at the gate because no one was manning the checkpoint. Workers were standing around a blueprint table, looking confused. It's beautiful, I thought, suppressing a smile. It's a disaster. I don't even have to do anything. If I just stand here and breathe, this project will bankrupt the Vance Corporation by next quarter. Hey, you, I turned. A man in a white hard hat and a fluorescent vest that was straining against his gut stomped toward me. He looked like a bulldog chewing a wasp. This was presumably the site manager, a man the file identified as Frank the Tank Miller. This is a hard hat zone, Miller barked, stopping inches from my face. He looked me up and down, sneering at my navy suit. Oh, it's you, the husband. He said husband the way one might say termite. Mr. Miller, I said pleasantly. I'm here to oversee the timeline. Miller let out a bark of laughter that sprayed spit. Oversee? Listen here, pretty boy. Go back to the spa. Tell your wife to sign the checks for the overtime, and we'll get it done when we get it done. We don't need a mascot tripping over the rebar. I felt a twitch in my right eye. Don't engage, I told myself. He's antagonizing you. Good. Let him be incompetent. Let him fail. That's the plan. I see, I said, forcing my voice to remain mild. So, you have everything under control? Completely. Miller lied, gesturing to the chaos behind him. It's a supply chain issue. Not my fault. I looked past him. I saw the problem immediately. It wasn't the supply chain. It was the staging area. They were unloading steel beams in the north quadrant, blocking the path for the cement trucks, which meant the pour couldn't happen, which meant the foundation crew was sitting idle. It was a logistical, not so simple a first-year intern could untie it. Let it burn, I thought. Walk away, Arthur. Go sit in the car and play Angry Birds. But then I saw it. One of the workers, a kid who couldn't be older than 20, was trying to manually haul a bag of cement because the forklift was trapped behind the blocked trucks. He was struggling, his back arching dangerously, and Miller was laughing. Look at the new guy sweat, he chuckled to his deputy. Dumb kid doesn't know he can just wait. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't just the inefficiency. I could handle inefficiency if it served a purpose. But I despised wasted potential. And I absolutely loathed bad management that endangered assets. Plan B, I thought, a cold rage settling over me. I can sabotage the project tomorrow. Today, I execute this moron. Miller, I said. My voice changed. It dropped an octave, losing the Julian softness and hitting that icy, resonating baritone that used to make senators nervous. Miller blinked, his smirk faltering. What? I stepped forward. I didn't look like a simp anymore. I looked like the owner. Your cement trucks are burning fuel at a rate of 4 gallons an hour idling at that gate, I said, pointing a manicured finger. You have steel being offloaded in the active lane, which is a violation of OSHA Safety Regulation 1926. And you have 3 cranes renting at $500 an hour that haven't moved in the 10 minutes I've been standing here. Miller's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Get the steel moved to the south lot. Now, I barked. Clear the lane for the mixers. And if I see one more worker hauling a 90-pound bag by hand because you're too lazy to organize a forklift path, I will fire you before you can blink. Do I make myself clear? The silence that followed was absolute. The nearby workers stopped moving. Miller turned a shade of purple usually reserved for bruised plums. You can't. I am the owner's proxy. I cut him off, my eyes cold flint. Move. Your ass. Miller scrambled. He actually scrambled. He started yelling orders, pointing at the steel, waving the trucks forward. I stood there, hands in my pockets, watching the anthill kick into gear. Within 15 minutes, the bottleneck cleared. The crane started swinging. The rhythm of the site shifted from chaotic noise to the industrial symphony of progress. It was satisfying. Deeply, viscerally satisfying. Then, the adrenaline faded. I looked around at the smoothly running site. I looked at the relieved workers. I looked at the schedule in my head, which I had just accidentally accelerated by 2 days. Oh no, I thought, horrified. I covered my face with my hand. I just fixed it. I'm supposed to be ruining this. Why am I like this? Why can't I just be incompetent?
Meanwhile, in the CEO's office, Sophie sat at her desk, a hand pressed over her mouth to stifle a giggle. She had heard it all. The description of Miller as a bulldog chewing a wasp. The internal struggle. And finally, the glorious, inevitable explosion of Arthur Sterling's confidence. Move. Your ass. She shivered. It was terrifying. It was attractive. It was so completely Arthur. Oh, you fool, she whispered fondly, looking at the construction site's live feed on her monitor, watching the tiny figure of her husband pacing angrily amidst the now efficient workflow. You couldn't be useless if you tried. She picked up her phone and dialed the site. Miller, she said when the breathless foreman answered. Listen to Mr. Thorne. Whatever he says goes. If you question him again, you're fired. She hung up, leaning back in her chair with a satisfied smile. Checkmate, darling.
I drove back to the office in a cloud of self-loathing. I had failed at failing. It was humiliating. I just saved her $250,000 in overtime, I thought, gripping the steering wheel of Julian's ridiculous convertible. I'm supposed to be a saboteur, not an efficiency consultant. Why couldn't I just keep my mouth shut? Why did I have to reorganize the crane schedule? I tried to rationalize it. It's a long con, I told myself. Yes, that's it. I'm gaining their trust. I'll make the project run perfectly for a week, and then I'll switch the blueprints for the plumbing with the electrical. Catastrophic failure. Perfect. It was a weak lie, and I knew it. The truth was, I was Arthur Sterling, and I was allergic to incompetence. I arrived at the office, ready to spin a tale of woe. I would tell Seraphina that I had alienated the crew, that Miller was quitting, that the site was in rebellion. I walked into her office, loosening my tie to look frazzled. Disaster, I announced, flopping into the chair opposite her desk. Total disaster. I yelled at the foreman. The workers are terrified. I think I might have accidentally violated a union treaty. You should probably fire me from the project immediately. Seraphina didn't look up from her screen. A small, infuriating smile played on her lips. Strange, she said. I just got an email from Miller. He says production is up 40% and the bottleneck at the gate is cleared. He actually called you a scary genius. I froze. Traitor, I thought. Miller, you sycophantic weasel. He's hallucinating. I tried. Stress. It does terrible things to the mind. Seraphina finally looked at me. Her eyes were sparkling. Stop lying, Julian. It's beneath you. She closed her laptop with a decisive snap. You succeeded, she stated. Which means I win the bet. You don't get the separate bedroom. I never agreed to that bet. I protested. You just announced it. Details, she waved a hand dismissively. But since you were so useful, I'm granting you a reward. I narrowed my eyes. Cash? A quick divorce decree. Dinner, she said, standing up. With me. I'd rather eat staples, I muttered. Italian, she continued, ignoring me. There's a place downtown. Luciano's. Be ready at 7. I was ready at 7. Not because I wanted to go, but because I was terrified of what she would do if I wasn't. We took her car. The interior smelled of her perfume. That cool, floral scent that was starting to annoy me, because it was actually quite pleasant. We sat in silence. Usually, Julian would be chattering away, complimenting her dress, asking about her day. I stared out the window, calculating the depreciation of the passing luxury vehicles. We arrived at Luciano's. It was the kind of place where the water menu had prices. We were ushered to a private booth in the back. The waiter arrived instantly. Good evening, Mrs. Vance. Mr. Thorne. The usual. I opened my mouth to order. In the novel, Julian had the palate of a toddler. He liked chicken tenders and pasta with butter. I, however, craved a dry-aged ribeye, rare, with a side of truffle risotto. Actually, I started, I'll have. He'll have the osso buco, Seraphina interrupted, not even looking at the menu. With the saffron risotto. No parsley. He hates parsley. I stopped. My mouth hung open slightly. What? Julian Thorne loved parsley. The book had a whole scene where he grew an herb garden for her. Arthur Sterling, however, loathed parsley. I despised the texture. I despised the taste. It was a garnish for people who lacked conviction. How did she know? I stared at her. She was calmly unfolding her napkin, looking the picture of elegance. I like parsley. I lied, testing her. She looked up, her gaze piercing. No, you don't. Last week you picked it out of your salad for 20 minutes. It was pathetic to watch. I'm saving us both the time. I did. I racked my brain. I don't remember eating a salad with her. I've barely eaten with her at all. The waiter left. I sat back, unsettled. You're very observant, I said slowly. I know my assets, she replied smoothly. Eat your bread. The food arrived. It was the osso buco. It looked incredible. It smelled exactly like the dish I used to order at my favorite spot in New York, a place Sophie and I used to go to for our mandatory monthly dates. I took a bite. It was perfect. The meat fell apart. The saffron was subtle. I couldn't help it. A noise of appreciation escaped my throat. I closed my eyes for a second, savoring the first decent meal I'd had since dying. Good? Seraphina asked. I opened my eyes. She was watching me, not with the cold arrogance of the CEO, but with a strange, soft intensity. She was leaning her chin on her hand, her eyes tracing my face. For a second, just a split second, the lighting caught her hair, softening the sharp angles of her face. She didn't look like Seraphina Vance. She looked familiar. It's acceptable, I grunted, retreating behind my defenses. For a chain restaurant. She laughed. It was a genuine laugh, low and throaty. You are such a snob, Julian. I don't know where you picked it up, but it suits you better than the puppy dog act. My heart did a strange, uncomfortable flip. She likes the snobbery? I thought, bewildered. Sophie hated it. Sophie used to look at the floor when I sent wine back. This woman enjoys it? So, she said, taking a sip of her red wine. The construction site. You fixed the logistics in 10 minutes. Where did you learn that? Art school. It was a trap. Julian went to art school. I watch a lot of documentaries, I said quickly. Discovery Channel. Mega structures. Very educational. Uh-huh, she smirked. She clearly didn't believe a word of it. She reached across the table. I tensed, expecting a slap or a grab. Instead, she picked up the wine bottle and poured more into my glass. Drink up, husband, she whispered. You're going to need your strength. I have another project for you tomorrow. I quit, I said instantly. You can't quit, she clinked her glass against mine. You're just getting started. As I looked at her, the fire in her eyes, the challenge in her smile, I realized with a sinking feeling that she was right. I wasn't going to the countryside. I was trapped in the boardroom with a shark. And God help me, I was starting to enjoy the swim. The next morning, the project, ruined Seraphina's company, hit a snag. The snag was about 6 feet tall, had perfectly coiffed blonde hair, and was currently blocking my path to the coffee machine. It was Liam, the executive assistant. The man the office gossip mill, in Chapter 3 of the novel, identified as Seraphina's white moonlight, the one she was supposed to be pining for. I looked at him. He was wearing a beige cardigan that made him look like a soft, approachable teddy bear. I, in my sharp charcoal suit, felt like a dagger wrapped in silk. Good morning, Mr. Thorne. Liam chirped, his voice gratingly cheerful. Here to drop off Mrs. Vance's dry cleaning? I stared at him. The disrespect was so casual, so practiced. In the book, Julian would have hung his head and handed over the receipts. I'm here for the marketing strategy meeting, I said, stepping around him. And get out of my way. You smell like vanilla extract and desperation. Liam blinked, his smile freezing. Oh, the meeting? Are you sure? Seraphina usually prefers qualified personnel in those. He lowered his voice to a conspiratorial whisper, leaning in close. Look, Julian, I know you're trying to be involved lately. It's sweet. Really. But Seraphina is stressed. She needs professional support right now, not distractions. Why don't you go home and work on your paintings? My left eye twitched. He's marking territory, I realized. This glorified secretary is trying to big dog me. I turned to face him fully. I didn't get angry. I got corporate. Liam, was it? I asked, though I knew his name perfectly well. Your job description is calendar management and beverage procurement, correct? I assist with. Excellent. I cut him off. Then assist yourself out of my path before I have HR redefine your role to unemployed. I pushed past him and walked into the conference room. The meeting was already underway. Seraphina sat at the head of the table, looking bored. When I walked in, her eyes flicked to me. I expected annoyance. Instead, I saw a flash of anticipation. You're late, she said. I was detained by the help. I replied, taking the seat to her immediate right, the seat of honor. Liam scurried in a moment later, flushed and holding a tray of pastries. He glared at me, then put on his best martyr face as he set the tray down near Seraphina. Sorry I'm late, Seraphina, he said breathlessly, purposely using her first name. I was just making sure everything was perfect for you. I got those almond croissants you love. Seraphina didn't even look at the pastries. Sit down, Liam. We're discussing the rebranding of the luxury line. The marketing director, a nervous woman named Brenda, began her presentation. It was mediocre. Standard buzzwords. Synergy. Paradigm shifts. Then, Liam spoke up. If I may, he said, raising a hand like a schoolboy. I think we're missing the heart of the brand. Seraphina, Miss Vance, isn't just a CEO. She's a symbol. We should center the campaign around love, softness, vulnerability. Show the world the gentle side of Vance Corporation. He looked at Seraphina with doe eyes. Like the way you take care of your employees. It's poetic. The room went silent. Some people nodded. In a romance novel, this would be the moment the CEO realizes the assistant gets her. I, however, nearly choked on my water. Love. I repeated, my voice deadpan. Liam turned to me, his smile condescending. Yes, Julian. Emotion sells. But I suppose you wouldn't understand the complexities of. You want to market a multinational conglomerate known for hostile takeovers and industrial shipping based on softness. I interrupted, leaning forward. This isn't a greeting card company, Liam. It's a Shark Tank. I stood up and walked to the whiteboard. I didn't ask permission. I just took the marker from Brenda. Vance Corp's stock value is tied to stability and dominance, I said, drawing a sharp upward graph. Investors don't want vulnerability. They want invincibility. If we run a campaign based on love, the market will think Seraphina is going soft. The stock will dip 3 points by lunch. I turned to Liam, capping the marker with a loud click. Your idea is not poetic, I said coldly. It is fiscal suicide. It sounds like something written by a teenager who thinks the economy runs on vibes. Liam's mouth opened and closed. I just thought. Don't think, I advised. Get the coffee. You're good at that. The room was deathly silent. Everyone looked at Seraphina, expecting her to defend her favorite pet. Seraphina was looking at the whiteboard. Then she looked at Liam, who was trembling slightly, looking hurt. In the book, she would have comforted him. Julian is right, she said. Liam flinched as if struck. Seraphina? The love angle is weak, she said, her voice bored. Scrap it. We go with Julian's approach. Dominance. Strength. She looked at me, her eyes locking onto mine. Invincibility. She turned to Liam. And Liam? The croissants are stale. Take them away. Liam looked shattered. He gathered the tray, his hands shaking, and fled the room. I sat back down, feeling a strange mixture of triumph and confusion. Why is she agreeing with me? I wondered. She loves that idiot. In the book, she buys him a private island. Now she's humiliating him publicly? I looked at Seraphina. She was staring at the door where Liam had exited, a look of mild distaste on her face. Is she playing 4D chess? I analyzed. Is she sacrificing him to appease me? But why? I'm the throwaway husband. Good input, Julian, she said softly, leaning toward me so only I could hear. Common sense, I grunted. Your assistant is an idiot. I don't know why you keep him. Seraphina smiled, a secret, dangerous smile. Maybe I just haven't found a suitable replacement yet, she whispered. Know anyone who needs a job? Someone ruthless? Someone efficient? I scoffed. I already have a job. Spending your money. We'll see, she said. As the meeting dispersed, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just won a battle I didn't know I was fighting. And worse, I realized with a jolt that I had enjoyed working with her. We had been a team. The Ice Queen and the, well, whatever I was. The shark and the wolf. No. I shook my head, grabbing my file. Don't get comfortable, Arthur. You're divorcing her. Remember the plan. Countryside. Tractor. Bread. But as I walked out, I saw Liam glaring at me from the break room, eyes filled with tears and vengeance. Bring it on, Goldilocks, I thought, straightening my tie. I eat little boys like you for breakfast.
For the last 2 years of my previous life, I thought I knew Arthur Sterling. I thought he was a machine made of spreadsheets and silence. A man who looked at me and saw a piece of furniture. I was wrong. I sat in my office chair, pretending to read a quarterly report, but my eyes were fixed on the glass wall that separated my office from the conference room. Arthur, wearing the body of Julian Thorne, was standing over the terrified head of logistics. I tuned into the frequency that had become my favorite radio station, the mind of Arthur Sterling. Look at this mess. Arthur's voice echoed in my head, crisp and annoyed. This idiot is routing shipments through the Suez without factoring in the seasonal tariffs. If I point it out, I look competent. If I don't, the stock drops. Ugh. Fine. I'll make it look like an accident. I watched as Arthur leaned down, tapped a specific cell on the tablet, and said aloud, "Oops. I think I pressed the optimize button. Is that bad?" The head of logistics looked at the screen, his eyes widening. My God. Mr. Thorne, you just saved us 12% on shipping costs. Arthur's internal voice groaned. Why? Why does oops always work? I am trying to be a burden. I bit my lip to stop the smile. It was intoxicating. Seeing him like this, passionate, snarky, inadvertently brilliant, was doing things to my heart that the Ice King never had. In our old life, he bore the weight of the world in silence. Here, I got to hear every grumpy, arrogant, wonderful thought. But then, the dynamic shifted. A woman walked into the conference room. Elena, my head of legal. She was sharp, attractive, and famously intolerant of fools. In the book, she despised Julian. Arthur turned to her. Finally, he thought. Someone with a brain. Nice suit. Tailored. Professional. Miss Kincaid, Arthur said aloud, nodding respectfully. I was just looking at the liability clauses in the merger. Section 4 feels loose. Elena blinked, surprised by his tone. She leaned in, looking at the tablet he held. You caught that? I've been arguing with the board about that clause for weeks. It's a loophole big enough to drive a truck through, Arthur said, and for the first time in days, he smiled. A genuine, professional smile of shared intellect. Elena smiled back. She touched his arm lightly, a professional gesture, barely anything, and laughed. You're full of surprises, Julian. A spike of hot, ugly acid hit my stomach. My hand clenched around my pen until the plastic casing cracked. Don't touch him, I thought, the intensity of the jealousy shocking me. He's not your colleague. He's my husband. He's mine. It was irrational. In my past life, I would have never dared to be jealous. I was the quiet wife. But in this body, with Seraphina's adrenaline coursing through my veins, I wanted to march in there and fire her. I stood up, smoothing my skirt, and walked out of my office. Julian, I called out. My voice was cool, carrying across the open floor. Arthur turned, his smile vanishing instantly, replaced by a guarded look. Elena pulled her hand back. Seraphina, Elena nodded. I need my husband, I said, putting a heavy emphasis on the last word. I walked up to Arthur and looped my arm through his. I felt him stiffen. We have to prepare. The gala is tonight. The gala, Arthur thought, his mind recoiling. Hell on earth. Bad champagne and people asking me what I do for a living. I'd rather undergo a root canal. I thought I wasn't invited, Arthur said aloud, trying to pull his arm away. You know, bad for the image? The simp husband. I tightened my grip. You're coming. And you're wearing the black velvet tuxedo. I picked it out. The annual Vance Charity Gala was the social event of the season. The ballroom was dripping with crystals, gold leaf, and the most insufferable people in the city. I stood at the entrance, Arthur by my side. He looked devastating. The black velvet absorbed the light, making his pale skin and dark eyes pop. He looked like a gothic prince who was judging everyone in the room. The floral arrangements are asymmetrical, Arthur was thinking. And the string quartet is rushing the tempo on Vivaldi. Amateurs. Stop critiquing the violinist, I whispered. He looked at me startled. I didn't say anything. You have a loud face, I lied. We descended the stairs. Heads turned. Whispers started. Usually, people looked at Seraphina with fear and Julian with pity. Tonight, they looked confused. They saw a power couple. Then, inevitably, came the pest. Liam hurried toward us, wearing a white suit that made him look like a decorative napkin. He was holding 2 glasses of champagne. Seraphina, he beamed, ignoring Arthur completely. You look radiant. I saved the first dance for you as per tradition. There was no such tradition. Arthur sighed. Here comes the golden retriever. Does he ever work? Or does he just hover around waiting to be humiliated? Liam, I said coolly. I'm with my husband. Liam laughed, a nervous titter. Oh, right. Julian. Good to see you, buddy. Look, why don't you go grab some hors d'oeuvres? The grown-ups need to talk strategy with the investors from Tokyo. He tried to step between us, using his shoulder to nudge Arthur aside. It was a mistake. Arthur didn't budge. He stood like a statue rooted to the earth. He looked at Liam, then at the investors approaching us, Mr. Tanaka and his associates. Strategy, Arthur repeated. You mean the yen carry trade implications on our tech sector? Liam blinked. The what? Mr. Tanaka, a stern man who barely spoke English, looked interested. He looked at Arthur. Arthur switched languages effortlessly. Tanaka-san, Arthur said in flawless, formal Japanese. It is an honor. I was reviewing the Nikkei index this morning. The volatility in the semiconductor market is concerning, isn't it? The silence in the immediate vicinity was deafening. Liam's jaw hit the floor. My heart swelled with so much pride I thought it might burst. Mr. Tanaka's face lit up. He bowed deep. Precisely, Thorne-san. We are very worried. Your wife's company, however, is insulated. We are pivoting to domestic manufacturing to mitigate the risk, Arthur replied, still in Japanese, glancing at me for confirmation. I read that in a memo on Seraphina's desk yesterday, he thought. Might as well use it. Mr. Tanaka laughed, clapping Arthur on the back. A wise man. Seraphina-san, your husband is a hidden dragon. I stepped forward, sliding my hand onto Arthur's chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. I looked at Liam, who was standing there holding 2 sweating glasses of champagne, looking completely irrelevant. Yes, I said, staring Liam down. He is. And we are very busy, Liam. Go fetch Mr. Tanaka a drink. Something aged. Not champagne. Liam flushed a deep, blotchy red. But the dance. Go, Arthur said. He didn't shout. He just used that voice, the command voice. Liam turned and fled. Arthur exhaled, adjusting his cufflinks. Show off, he chided himself. I just made myself valuable again. Stupid. I should have asked Tanaka if he liked anime. That would have ruined it. I suppressed a giggle. I leaned up, brushing my lips against his ear. You speak Japanese? I teased. I watched anime, he grunted, sticking to his lie. You are a terrible liar, Julian, I whispered. And you, he countered, looking down at me, his eyes dark and unreadable, are looking at me like you want to eat me alive. If only you knew, I thought. Maybe I do, I said. Just then, a woman in a red dress approached. It was the daughter of the banking CEO. She was young, bubbly, and had been eyeing Arthur since we walked in. Mr. Thorne, she chirped, batting her eyelashes. I heard you talking about the market. It was so intense. Could you explain the carry trade to me? Maybe over a drink. She put a hand on his bicep. The red haze returned instantly. Arthur looked at her. She smells like bubblegum and daddy's money, he thought. But she's an exit strategy from this conversation. He started. I moved. I stepped directly between them, breaking her contact. I didn't care about the plot. I didn't care about the villainous role. He can't, I said, my voice dropping to sub-zero temperatures. The girl recoiled. Excuse me. He can't explain it to you, I said, my eyes boring into hers. Because he's busy. With his wife. I grabbed Arthur's lapels and pulled him onto the dance floor, away from her, away from Liam, away from everyone. Arthur stumbled slightly, following my lead. Possessive much? He thought, sounding confused but not entirely displeased. What is wrong with this woman? She treats me like a chew toy 1 minute and a prize poodle the next. I pulled him close, my body pressed against his. We began to sway to the music. Don't talk to her, I commanded softly. Why? He challenged, his hand resting hesitantly on my waist. Jealous. Yes, I admitted. Arthur froze. He looked down at me, searching my face for the lie. She's serious, he realized. She's actually jealous. Why? I'm Julian. I'm the simp. Unless. His thoughts trailed off into a static of confusion. He didn't know. He couldn't know. But tonight, with his hand on my waist and the world watching us, I decided I didn't care if he figured it out. I just wanted to dance with my husband.
Yes, she had said. The word hung in the air between us, heavier than the humidity in the ballroom. I stared down at her. Seraphina Vance, the villainess, the cold-blooded CEO who allegedly married me for a tax break, was jealous. It didn't fit the data. It didn't fit the psychological profile I had built of her over the last 3 days. Before I could interrogate her, the orchestra swelled. A waltz. The Blue Danube. Cliché, but effective. Dance. She commanded, not waiting for me to take the lead. I stepped into the frame automatically. My body remembered the drill. I had attended hundreds of these galas as Arthur Sterling. I hated them, but I was good at them. I knew how to hold a frame so rigid it could support a bridge. I knew exactly when to turn to avoid the waiters. I placed my right hand on her waist. I took her left hand in mine. And then, we moved. It should have been awkward. Julian Thorne was clumsy. His muscle memory should have been fighting me. Seraphina was shorter than I was used to. The physics should have been off. But we didn't stumble. We glided. I took a step back. She stepped forward instantly, filling the space before I had even fully committed to the movement. I pivoted sharp left to avoid a stumbling drunk donor. She pivoted with me, her body staying perfectly parallel to mine, as if we were magnets with opposing poles. This is wrong, I thought, my brow furrowing. I wasn't dancing like a generic lead. I was dancing like Arthur. I had a specific, aggressive style of waltzing, long strides, sharp turns, minimal rise and fall. It was a style that usually exhausted my partners because they had to run to keep up. Seraphina wasn't running. She was floating. She wasn't looking at her feet. She wasn't looking at the crowd. She was looking at my tie, her head resting just inches from my chest. She knows my rhythm, I realized, a cold prickle of unease running down my spine. She knows I break on the 3 count, not the 1. She knows I dip slightly before a reverse turn. How? In the novel, Seraphina and Julian never danced. Their wedding dance was described as a torture of stepped-on toes and icy silence. This was fluid. It was symbiotic. It felt home. The thought hit me with the force of a physical blow. I looked down at the top of her head. The scent of her hair, roses and something cool, filled my nose. It wasn't Sophie's scent. Sophie used lavender shampoo. Cheap, drugstore lavender. But the feeling? The silence? I remembered the last gala I attended with Sophie. We had danced. I had been stressed about the merger. I was tense, my hand gripping hers too tight. And Sophie had done something. A small, unconscious habit she had whenever I was on the verge of snapping. She would rub her thumb over the back of my hand. Up and down. A slow, rhythmic stroke. 1, 2. 1, 2. I looked at our joined hands now. Seraphina's thumb was moving. 1, 2. 1, 2. It was a soft, absent-minded caress against my knuckles. A soothing gesture. My breath hitched in my throat. I stumbled. It was the first mistake I had made. Julian? She asked, looking up. Her eyes were wide, dark, and filled with concern. I stopped moving. We were in the middle of the dance floor, people swirling around us like a colorful river, but I couldn't move. I stared at her. I really looked at her. The face was Seraphina Vance. The sharp cheekbones, the intimidating beauty. But the eyes? The way she was looking at me right now? It wasn't the predator looking at prey. It was soft. It was patient. Who are you? I whispered. The question came out before I could filter it. She stiffened. Her thumb stopped moving. I'm your wife, she said, but her voice wavered. It lacked the imperious steel of the CEO. No. I said, my voice low and urgent. You're not. Seraphina Vance doesn't dance like this. She doesn't. I looked down at her hand, then back to her eyes. She doesn't know how to follow a lead that I haven't used in 2 years. A lead that belongs to a dead man. Her pupils dilated. Fear? Recognition? You're imagining things, she said quickly, trying to pull away. You're leading well. I'm just following. It's basic physics, Julian. It's not physics, I insisted, tightening my grip on her hand. I wouldn't let her go. It's muscle memory. You're soothing me. You're rubbing my hand. What? She looked down at her hand as if it had betrayed her. She yanked it away from mine. It's a nervous tick, she snapped, the Ice Queen mask slamming back into place. Don't read into it. You're overanalyzing again. It's annoying. She stepped back, creating distance between us. The warmth was gone. The familiarity was severed. The song is over, she said, though the music was clearly still playing. I need a drink. She turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd with a speed that looked remarkably like fleeing. I stood there, alone on the dance floor, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I looked at my hand, the ghost of her touch still lingering on my knuckles. A nervous tick? I thought, watching her retreat. Maybe. But my analytical mind, the mind that had built an empire, was screaming at me. Coincidences are for lazy writers, I thought. First, the parsley. Then, the specific dislike of Liam. Now the dance. The touch. I narrowed my eyes. That woman is hiding something, and I'm going to find out what it is. I didn't chase her immediately. That would be emotional, and I was currently operating on cold, hard logic. I walked to the bar, my eyes never leaving her figure as she wove through the crowd. She moved with a desperate speed, dodging a waiter and 2 minor celebrities before vanishing through the French doors that led to the terrace. I ordered a scotch. Neat. I took a sip, letting the burn settle my nerves. Hypothesis, I thought, leaning against the mahogany bar. Seraphina Vance is acting out of character. Variable A, she has suffered a neurological event. Variable B, she is playing a psychological game to keep me off balance. Variable C, I swirled the amber liquid in the glass. Variable C, she is not Seraphina Vance. It was insane. It was impossible. Transmigration was something that happened in the trashy novel I was currently living in, not a repeatable phenomenon. The odds of 2 people from the same car crash ending up in the same fictional universe, in the same marriage, were astronomical. But Arthur Sterling didn't play odds. He played the market. And right now, the market was signaling an anomaly. I set the glass down. I didn't need the alcohol. I needed answers. I straightened my jacket and walked toward the terrace doors. The night air was biting. The terrace was empty, save for a few smokers huddled near the heat lamps on the far side. Seraphina was standing at the stone railing, looking out over the city skyline. Her back was to me. Her shoulders were hunched, her arms wrapped around herself. The Ice Queen looked small, fragile. I walked up behind her. I made sure my footsteps were audible. I didn't want to startle her. I wanted to observe her reaction to my presence. She didn't turn around. You're cold, I said. She flinched, but only slightly. I'm fine, Julian. Go back inside. Go charm the investors with your sudden knowledge of Japanese economics. I prefer the cold, I said, stepping up beside her. I unbuttoned my velvet tuxedo jacket, took it off, and draped it over her shoulders. It was a reflex. I had done it a dozen times for Sophie after late-night galas while waiting for the valet. Seraphina froze as the heavy fabric settled over her. She gripped the lapels instantly, pulling it tighter. Thank you, she whispered. Her voice sounded wet. Was she crying? I leaned against the railing, facing her profile. Why did you run? I didn't run, she lied, staring stubbornly at the city lights. I needed air. Your cologne is overwhelming. It's sandalwood, I noted. You bought it for me. Well, I have changed my mind. I hate it. You seem to be changing your mind about a lot of things lately, I said softly. Parsley. My incompetence. Dancing. She turned to face me then, her expression fierce. People change, Julian. It's called growth. You should try it. I am trying, I said, but I'm having trouble reconciling the data. I decided to drop the bait. I needed to see if she would snap at the mention of my old self. You know, I said casually, looking out at the skyline. This view reminds me of the Sterling Tower. You know the one? Arthur Sterling's headquarters. I watched her peripheral vision. She went rigid. I know it, she said tightly. Tragic business. I continued, my voice conversational. The crash last week. The Ice King of Commerce, dead at 26. The markets are still correcting. He was a brilliant man, she said. The praise came too quickly. Too automatically. Was he? I countered. I heard he was a cold-hearted tyrant. Married to his work. Probably didn't have a single friend who wasn't on the payroll. Seraphina whipped her head around to look at me. Her eyes were blazing with sudden, irrational anger. He wasn't a tyrant, she snapped. He was misunderstood. He carried the weight of a legacy. He was focused, driven. You sound like you knew him. I pressed, my heart hammering. I read Forbes, she deflected, looking away. And his wife. I pushed harder. Sophie was it? Nobody talks about her. Just collateral damage in the passenger seat. I heard she was plain, boring, a mismatch. It was a cruel thing to say. I felt a pang of guilt as the words left my mouth, insulting my own wife's memory. But I needed a reaction. I got one. Seraphina dropped her champagne glass. It shattered on the stone tiles, the sound sharp and violent in the quiet night. She wasn't a mismatch, Seraphina hissed, her voice trembling with a rage that terrified me. She stepped closer, poking a finger into my chest, right through the dress shirt. She loved him. She loved him more than anyone in that cold, empty world did. And maybe she was quiet. Maybe she was boring to people like you. But she was the only one who saw him as a human being and not a bank account. She was breathing hard, tears standing in her eyes. She died holding his hand, she shouted, her voice cracking. So don't you dare call her collateral damage. Silence descended on the balcony. I stared at her, stunned. That wasn't Seraphina Vance defending a stranger. That was personal. That was intimate grief. That was Sophie. The name screamed in my mind. It had to be her. The parsley. The thumb rub. The defense of Arthur Sterling. The rage at the insult to Sophie. I looked at her face, the sharp, alien features of Seraphina Vance, and for the first time, I saw the ghost of the woman I had married. Sophie, I whispered. The color drained from her face. Her eyes went wide with panic. She realized what she had said. She realized she had broken character. She took a stumbling step back, her heel crunching on the broken glass. I don't know what you're talking about, she stammered. I'm drunk. I'm going home. She turned and ran. This time, she didn't walk. She sprinted toward the doors, the oversized tuxedo jacket slipping off her shoulders and falling to the ground like a shed skin. Seraphina, wait. I lunged to grab her, but I was too slow. She was through the doors and into the crowd. I stood alone on the terrace, the wind whipping my hair. I looked down at the jacket on the floor. I looked at the shattered glass. A slow, disbelief-filled laugh bubbled up in my throat. Sophie, I said to the empty air, the realization hitting me like a semi-truck all over again. My wife was alive. My quiet, mousy, overlooked wife was currently the most powerful woman in the city, and she had just screamed at me for insulting. Well, myself. And she was terrifying. I picked up the jacket, dusting off the glass shards. Well then, I murmured, a determined grin spreading across my face. If you want to play hide and seek, Mrs. Sterling, game on. I stood frozen on the terrace, the cold wind biting through my thin dress shirt, but my mind was burning with a feverish intensity. I replayed the conversation in my head. I rewound the tape, dissecting every syllable, every inflection, examining the data with the ruthlessness of a forensic accountant. He was a brilliant man. He was misunderstood. She died holding his hand. My grip on the velvet jacket tightened until my knuckles turned white. It wasn't just the emotion. It wasn't just the defense of Sophie. It was the knowledge. I took a slow, steadying breath, forcing my heart rate to decelerate so I could think. Arthur Sterling does not exist in this world. I had read the CEO's reluctant groom cover to cover on that flight to Tokyo. I had memorized the corporate hierarchy of this fictional universe. The top predator here was Vance Corporation. Then the rival conglomerate, Kincaid Industries. There was no Sterling Group. There was no Ice King. There was no Sophie from the countryside. To the characters in this book, to the real Seraphina Vance, the name Arthur Sterling should have been nonsense. It should have been as meaningless as a random string of numbers. If I had mentioned him to Liam, Liam would have asked, "Who is that?" But Seraphina? She didn't ask who. She argued. She knew his reputation. She knew his nickname. She knew the specific details of a car crash that happened in a completely different dimension, in a reality that shouldn't exist here. She possesses external data, I realized, the conclusion locking into place like a steel bolt. She has access to the database of my previous life. There were only two possibilities. 1. She was a psychic with interdimensional awareness. Highly improbable. 2. She was a transmigrator, just like me. And considering she knew exactly how Sophie felt in those final moments, she died holding his hand. The variable collapsed into a single certainty. Sophie. I said again, testing the weight of the name against the reality of the woman who had just fled. It explained everything. The parsley? Sophie knew I hated it. The dancing? Sophie knew my rhythm because she had followed it for 2 years. The hatred of Liam? Sophie, in her quiet way, had always despised sycophants. She used to roll her eyes, imperceptibly, whenever my assistants fawned over me. The country life comment? That was Sophie's dream. She had a Pinterest board full of cottages and vegetable gardens. I had mocked it once. A wave of vertigo hit me. I leaned against the stone railing, looking down at the street below. My wife, the woman I had ignored, the woman I had treated like a background accessory, was here. And she wasn't just here. She was Seraphina Vance. She was the shark. She was the woman tearing up divorce papers and commanding boardrooms. And she was hiding from me. Why? The question gnawed at me. Why hadn't she told me? Why was she pretending to be the villainess? Because of me, the answer whispered in my mind. Because she thinks Arthur Sterling is a cold, heartless bastard who didn't love her. She thinks if I know it's her, I'll what? Reject her? Treat her like furniture again? I remembered the look in her eyes on the dance floor. The fear. The longing. She's trying to make me fall in love with Seraphina, I realized, because she thinks I could never fall in love with Sophie. A sharp, jagged pain twisted in my chest. It was guilt, massive and suffocating. I had done this to her. I had conditioned her to believe she wasn't enough. You idiot. I cursed myself, staring at the shattered champagne glass. You absolute, catastrophic idiot. I checked my watch. 9:15 p.m. She had run. She would have taken the car. I needed to get home. I needed to catch her before she built her walls back up. I needed to break the script. I turned and marched back into the ballroom. The party was in full swing. I scanned the room for a vehicle. I saw Liam standing near the chocolate fountain, looking sullen and eating a strawberry. Keys. I barked, stopping in front of him. Liam jumped, dropping the strawberry into the fountain with a bloop. What? Your car keys. I demanded, holding out my hand. Seraphina left with the driver. I need a vehicle. But that's my company car, Liam stammered. It's a Prius. You can't just. I stepped closer. I didn't have time for the villain act. I didn't have time for corporate politics. Liam, I said, my voice low and dangerous. Give me the keys, or I will recount, in vivid detail, the exact vulnerability in your marketing strategy to every investor in this room. I will explain why you are a liability to this company until you are unhireable in this hemisphere. Liam paled. He fumbled in his pocket and slapped a key fob into my hand. Take it, he squeaked. It's parked out front. Thank you for your contribution to the firm, I said dryly. I sprinted out of the gala. I ignored the valet. I found the white Prius, jammed the key in, and peeled out of the driveway. The car was sluggish. The suspension was soft. It smelled of vanilla air freshener. I hated it, but I drove it like it was a Ferrari. I wove through the city traffic, my mind racing faster than the engine. What do I say? Hello, Sophie. Nice to see you again. Sorry about the truck? No. Too flippant. I know it's you. Stop lying. Too aggressive. She'd deny it. I needed to corner her. Not physically, but intellectually. I needed to present her with irrefutable proof that I knew her secret. And then I needed to do what I should have done 2 years ago. I needed to woo my wife. I merged onto the highway leading to the Vance estate. She thinks she's playing a game, I thought, gripping the steering wheel. She thinks she's the villainess trapping the simp husband. She has no idea she's trapped in a house with the man who memorized her favorite flower, her coffee order, and, apparently, her dance steps, even if he was too stupid to acknowledge them when she was alive. I saw the exit for the estate. Ready or not, Mrs. Sterling, I thought, flooring the accelerator of the Prius. I'm coming home. The Prius whined in protest as I pushed it past 70 on the winding road leading to the Vance estate. My mind was moving faster than the car. I was building a case, brick by logical brick. Premise 1. We are inside a novel titled The CEO's Reluctant Groom. Premise 2. The universe of this novel is a closed system. Its history, geography, and famous figures are limited to what the author wrote. Fact. The author never wrote a character named Arthur Sterling. I checked the wiki. I checked the fan forums. I read the book twice. Sterling Global Logistics does not exist in this world's canon. I gripped the steering wheel, swerving around a slow-moving truck. Conclusion. For Seraphina Vance to know about Arthur Sterling, the Ice King, and the specific details of a car crash on a rainy Tuesday in New York, she cannot be a native inhabitant of this world. Information cannot be created from nothing. If the data isn't in the source code, it has to be imported. She's an import, I said aloud, the words bouncing off the plastic dashboard. Just like me. And if she was an import who knew how Sophie felt in her dying moments, she was Sophie. It was the only variable that fit the equation. But as I drove through the wrought iron gates of the estate, a secondary, nagging variable itched at the back of my brain. How did she know about the parsley? I hadn't ordered food at the restaurant. I hadn't spoken to the waiter. She had ordered for me before I even opened my mouth. How did she know I hated the vanilla scent on Liam? I hadn't mentioned it to anyone. I had only thought it. How did she know my rhythm on the dance floor instantly? Muscle memory explained the dancing, perhaps. But the specific knowledge of my internal preferences? Maybe she's just been watching me that closely, I rationalized, parking the car askew in the driveway. Sophie was always observant, quietly gathering data while I was busy looking at spreadsheets. God, I was such a fool. I slammed the car door shut and stormed up the front steps. The house was quiet. The servants had likely made themselves scarce after Seraphina's dramatic return. I didn't bother checking the lower floor. I knew where she would be. I took the stairs 2 at a time. My heart was pounding, a chaotic drumbeat against my ribs. I wasn't marching into a hostile takeover. I was marching toward the only person in this universe who was real. I reached the master bedroom door. It was closed. I paused, my hand hovering over the handle. What if I'm wrong? Doubt whispered. What if she's just crazy? What if this is just a weird plot twist I forgot? No, I steeled myself. The data is conclusive. That was Sophie on the balcony, and I am going to get her back. I threw the door open. We need to talk. Seraphina was standing in the middle of the room. She had changed out of her gown into a silk robe that looked like armor. She was holding a glass of wine, her knuckles white against the stem. She didn't look surprised. She looked terrified. Get out, she said, her voice trembling. I have a headache. I don't want to talk to you. Too bad, I said, stepping inside and closing the door behind me. The lock clicked with a finality that made her jump. I walked toward her. She took a step back, bumping into the chaise lounge. You know things you shouldn't know? I stated, keeping my voice calm, analytical. You know Arthur Sterling. You know about the crash. You know about Sophie. I told you, she said, her eyes darting around the room, looking for an escape. I read about it. In a magazine. An international business journal. There is no international business journal in this world that covers the Sterling Group. I countered, closing the distance. I checked the library database yesterday. Sterling Global doesn't exist here. It's a fictional world, Seraphina. Arthur Sterling is a ghost. He's not in the script. She froze. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. So tell me, I whispered, stopping just inches from her. How does a character in a book know the biography of a man from a different reality? She stared at me, her chest heaving. Say it, I screamed inside my head. Just say it, Sophie. Tell me it's you. Tell me I'm not alone in this paper-thin world. As the thought formed in my mind, loud, desperate, and pleading, Seraphina flinched. It wasn't a physical reaction to my movement. I hadn't moved. It was a reaction to the thought. Her eyes widened, and she looked directly into my eyes with a sudden, dawning horror. You? She breathed. I frowned. Me what? You think? She started, then stopped herself, biting her lip so hard it turned white. Why is she looking at me like that? I wondered. She looks like she's hearing a ghost. I think you are Sophie Sterling, I said aloud. And I think you're scared to admit it because you think Arthur was a monster. He wasn't a monster, she shouted, slamming her wine glass down on the table. Wine sloshed over the rim, staining the wood red. He was just stupid. He was an emotional idiot who didn't know his wife existed until a truck hit them. I know, I shouted back, losing my composure. I know he was an idiot. I know he regrets it every single second he breathes in this stolen body. The silence that followed was deafening. Seraphina stared at me, tears spilling over her lashes. You, she whispered, her voice barely audible. You regret it. Yes, I said, my voice breaking. I regret the late nights. I regret the separate rooms. I regret that I never told her. I regret that I never told her I loved her, I thought. I regret that I died before I could learn her favorite color. Seraphina let out a choked sob. She covered her mouth with her hand, her eyes squeezing shut as if in physical pain. Why is she crying exactly when I think the saddest parts? I analyzed, confused by the timing. It's like she synced to me. Seraphina, I said, reaching out to touch her shoulder. She slapped my hand away. Don't, she gasped, stepping back. Don't touch me. Not yet. She looked up at me, her eyes red and swollen. If you are Arthur. I am, I confirmed. Then prove it, she challenged, wiping her face with the back of her hand. But there was a strange glint in her eye. A test. Tell me something only Arthur would know. Something inside. I looked at her. I hate parsley, I said. She let out a wet, hysterical laugh. I know. I count the steps when I walk into a new building. I continued. I know, she whispered. I hesitated. This was a secret I had never told anyone. Not even Sophie. I sing Dancing Queen in the shower when I'm stressed. But only the chorus. Seraphina's eyes went wide. Her jaw dropped slightly. You do? Wait, I thought. She didn't know that? You didn't know that? I asked. No, she said, looking baffled. I never heard that. Interesting, I thought, my detective brain firing back up. So her external database isn't complete. She knows my habits, my public persona, my likes and dislikes, but not my deepest secrets. That implies observation. Intense, constant observation. Well, I do, I said. Now it's your turn. Prove to me you're Sophie. Tell me something Sophie would know. Seraphina looked at me. She took a deep breath, composing herself. The Ice Queen mask slid back into place, but it was thinner now, translucent. Sophie knew, she said softly, that Arthur Sterling had a scar on his left shoulder from a fencing accident when he was 12. She knew because she used to look at it while he slept. I froze. I did have that scar. It was small, faded. I never spoke about it. She watched me sleep. The thought was both creepy and heartbreakingly tender. Sophie. I breathed, reaching for her again. Stop, she commanded, holding up a hand. I haven't admitted anything. I just said Sophie knew that. She was backpedaling. Why? Because she's hiding something else, I deduced. She admitted the knowledge, but she won't admit the identity. Why? Is there another rule to this world? Or is she? My eyes narrowed. Is she enjoying this? You are playing games, I accused. You enjoy watching me squirm. You enjoy having the upper hand for once. Seraphina's lips quirked. A spark of the villainess returned. Maybe I do, she said. Arthur Sterling was always in control. Julian Thorne is malleable. It's a refreshing change of pace. She's admitting it without admitting it, I realized. She wants me to chase her. She wants me to earn her. She wants the courtship we never had. I looked at her. This fierce, beautiful, terrifying woman who was holding my heart in her manicured hands. Fine, I said, a slow grin spreading across my face. I buttoned my jacket. You want to play hard to get, Mrs. Vance? You want me to be the simp husband chasing the CEO? I took a step back, bowing formally. Challenge accepted. But be warned, Sophie. I don't lose mergers. And I certainly don't intend to lose my wife twice. I turned and walked toward the door. I'm going to make you fall in love with me so hard you won't be able to hide it. I thought loudly, broadcasting my intent to the room, though I assumed only I could hear it. I'm going to bring you coffee. I'm going to fix your company. And I am going to buy you the biggest, ugliest tractor you've ever seen. Behind me, I heard a sharp intake of breath, followed by the sound of a glass shattering against the wall. I paused at the door, smiling. Gotcha. I walked down the hallway, the adrenaline still humming in my veins like a triple shot of espresso. She broke a glass, I noted with satisfaction. I rattled her. Good. I retreated to my assigned bedroom, the guest suite that was larger than my first apartment. I loosened my tie and paced the floor, my mind shifting from detective mode to acquisition mode. Strategy, I mused, rubbing my chin. She wants to play hard to get? Fine. I'll play the devoted husband. But not the simp Julian was. I'll be indispensable. I pulled out my phone and opened a browser. I typed in agricultural machinery dealerships. She wants a peaceful life? A tractor? I scrolled through images of massive green machines. I remember that Pinterest board she left open on the iPad once. She wanted a John Deere compact utility with a front loader. I clicked Contact Dealer. I'll buy it, I decided, a grin tugging at my lips. I'll have it delivered to the corporate HQ parking lot. That should make a statement. Here, darling. I support your dreams of agrarian escapism. I tossed the phone onto the bed. And tomorrow morning, breakfast. Julian usually made burnt toast. Arthur Sterling made a Benedict that could make a Michelin inspector weep. I'm going to feed you, Sophie, I thought, staring at the ceiling. I'm going to anticipate your needs before you even know you have them. You think you can hide behind that villainous mask? I'm going to kiss it right off your face.
I stared at the shattered remains of the wine glass on the hardwood floor, my hand trembling uncontrollably. It wasn't the confrontation that had broken me. It wasn't even him figuring out who I was. It was the tractor. Biggest, ugliest tractor you've ever seen. The thought had echoed in my head, loud and clear, just as he walked out the door. I sank onto the chaise lounge, burying my face in my hands. He remembered. He remembered the stupid Pinterest board I had made 3 years ago. The one I thought he never looked at because he was always too busy reading the Financial Times. He remembered that I wanted a garden. He remembered I wanted a quiet life. And his voice, his internal voice, it wasn't cold. It wasn't the terrifying, clipped tone of Arthur Sterling, the CEO. It was warm. It was playful. It was desperate. I'm going to kiss it right off your face. The new thought hit me like a physical caress, drifting through the wall from the guest room. I let out a shaky breath, my face heating up. He really doesn't know I can hear him, I whispered to the empty room. He thinks he's being so mysterious, so strategic. I closed my eyes, listening to the chaotic, brilliant, surprisingly sweet noise of his mind planning his attack. Hollandaise sauce requires clarified butter. Do we have cayenne pepper? A small, genuine giggle escaped my lips. Arthur Sterling, the Ice King, was currently panic planning a breakfast menu to impress me. I pulled the silk robe tighter around myself. I should be terrified. I should be worried about the plot, about the butterfly effect, about Liam. But for the first time since I woke up in this strange, hostile world, I didn't feel alone. Bring it on, husband, I whispered into the darkness. Let's see what you've got.
The kitchen staff of the Vance estate looked like they were being held hostage. It was 6 a.m. I was wearing a pristine white apron over my suit trousers, my sleeves rolled up to the elbows. Whisk, I commanded, holding out my hand without looking. The head chef, a terrifying French man named Pierre who usually threw knives at people, meekly placed a whisk in my palm. Oui, Monsieur Thorne. I attacked the bowl of egg yolks. The key to a perfect hollandaise is aggression tempered with mercy. You have to beat it into submission while gently coaxing it with heat. Sophie loves extra lemon, I thought, squeezing a fresh lemon with precise force. She pretends she likes it rich and creamy, but I remember that time at the brunch in the Hamptons. She practically drank the vinaigrette. She likes the acid to cut the fat. I added a pinch of cayenne. And a little kick. Because she's feisty now. My little firecracker. I smiled at the yellow mixture. It was glossy, thick, perfect. Toast the English muffins, I ordered Pierre. If they are even slightly burnt, I will deport you. Yes, chef, I mean monsieur. I plated the eggs Benedict. 2 perfectly poached eggs, wobbling like nervous jellies. A generous draping of sauce. A sprinkle of chives, cut at a 45-degree angle, obviously. I placed the plate on a silver tray. Operation, feed the wife as a go, I thought, marching out of the kitchen.
I was already awake. In fact, I hadn't slept. It is very hard to sleep when your husband's internal monologue is broadcasting a cooking show directly into your brain. Aggression tempered with mercy. My little firecracker. I sat at the dining table, staring at my empty placemat, trying desperately to keep my face neutral. My heart was doing somersaults. He remembered the lemon? He remembered the Hamptons brunch? I heard his footsteps approaching. Good morning, Seraphina, Arthur said aloud. His voice was smooth, velvety. He placed the plate in front of me with a flourish. Breakfast, he announced. Eggs Benedict. I took the liberty of firing the chef, temporarily. He didn't understand the structural integrity of a poached egg. I looked down at the food. It looked like a magazine cover. Eat it, Arthur's voice boomed in my head. Taste it. Realize that Julian Thorne is a domestic god. Realize that you can never divorce me because you will starve without my sauce. I bit the inside of my cheek to stop from laughing. He was so arrogant. And so endearing. I picked up my fork and cut into the egg. The yolk ran perfectly. I took a bite. It was heaven. It was tangy, rich, and spicy. It was exactly how I liked it. I started, trying to sound indifferent. Say it, Arthur urged silently. Say it's better than Pierre's. Say it's the best thing you've ever put in your mouth. It's edible, I said, wiping the corner of my mouth with a napkin. A bit acidic. Arthur's face fell for a nanosecond. Acidic? His mind shrieked. Impossible. The ratio was 3-to-1. Unless, maybe the lemons in this world are more potent? Damn it. Variable overlooked. I'll adjust the pH next time, he said stiffly. Finish it. We have to go to work. I ate every bite. I even used a piece of muffin to wipe the plate clean when he turned around to pour coffee. She ate it all, Arthur noted, his internal voice smug again. She says acidic, but the plate is clean. Action speaks louder than words, Sophie. You're hooked. I hid my smile behind the coffee cup. The drive to work was tense. Arthur was vibrating with a strange energy. He kept checking his watch and drumming his fingers on the steering wheel of the Prius. ETA 5 minutes, he thought. The delivery tracker says arrived. Oh, this is going to be good. This is going to be the grandest romantic gesture in the history of corporate America. I frowned. Delivery? What delivery? We pulled up to the massive glass skyscraper of Vance Corporation. Usually, the circular driveway was filled with town cars and executives rushing to meetings. Today, it was blocked by a flatbed truck. And on that truck sat a monstrous, bright green, gleaming tractor. It was huge. It had wheels taller than a person. It had a front-end loader bucket that looked like it could scoop up a sedan. And tied around the exhaust pipe was a giant red ribbon. People were standing on the sidewalk, taking photos. Security guards were yelling into radios. What? I gasped, staring out the window. What is that? Arthur parked the Prius right behind the truck. He turned to me, his eyes shining with the excitement of a boy who just caught a frog. You said you wanted a peaceful life, he said, unlocking the doors. You wanted the countryside. Well, since we can't leave the city just yet, I brought the countryside to you. He got out of the car. I followed, stumbling slightly in my heels. Arthur walked up to the truck driver, signed a clipboard, and then turned to the gathering crowd of employees. He spread his arms wide, gesturing to the multi-ton agricultural machine. For my wife, he announced, his voice carrying over the murmurs. Look at that horsepower, Arthur thought, admiring the machine. It's a John Deere 4066M. Hydrostatic transmission. It's practical. It's durable. It says, I support your dreams, but I also value torque. She's going to swoon. I stood on the sidewalk, my mouth agape. I wasn't swooning. I was mortified. And hysterically amused. Liam came running out of the revolving doors, looking panicked. Seraphina, he yelled. There is a farm vehicle blocking the VIP entrance. I've called the police. Cancel the police, Arthur barked, patting the massive tire of the tractor. This is a gift. It stays. Arthur looked at me, waiting for my reaction. His eyes were hopeful. Come on, Sophie, he thought. Run to it. Climb in. I got the heated seat option. I walked toward him slowly. The absurdity of it washed over me. Here was Arthur Sterling, a man who dealt in billions, who wore Italian suits, standing next to a tractor in the middle of the financial district, looking at me like he had just conquered a kingdom. He had bought me a tractor. Because I pinned a picture of a garden 3 years ago. Julian, I said, my voice shaking. Do you like it? He asked. I can get the plow attachment if you want to dig up the flower beds in the lobby. I looked at the tractor. I looked at Liam's horrified face. I looked at Arthur. I started to laugh. It wasn't a polite titter. It was a full-body, unladylike laugh that doubled me over. You. I wheezed. You bought me a tractor. Yes, Arthur said, looking slightly confused by the laughter. Is that a happy laugh? Or a nervous breakdown laugh? I straightened up, wiping a tear from my eye. I walked up to him. I ignored the crowd. I ignored Liam. I reached out and grabbed Arthur's tie, pulling him down to my level. You're insane, I whispered. I am efficient, he corrected. It's the ugliest thing I've ever seen, I said, looking at the neon green paint. Arthur's face fell. Ugly? But the reviews said. And I added, softening my voice, it is the best gift anyone has ever given me. Arthur blinked. A slow, genuine smile spread across his face, breaking the Julian mask completely. She likes it, he thought, relief flooding his mind. She really likes it. Score 1 for Arthur. Does this mean I get a kiss? He asked aloud, cheeky and bold. I looked at his lips. Then I looked at Liam, who was watching us with his mouth open. Don't push your luck, farm boy, I said, releasing his tie. Now, figure out how to park that monstrosity before the city tows it. I turned and walked toward the revolving doors, my heart soaring. Behind me, I heard Arthur yelling at the valet. You! Yes, you in the vest. Do you know how to operate a hydrostatic transmission? No? Fine. Move over. I'll park it myself. I paused at the door to watch. Arthur Sterling, in a three-piece suit, climbed into the cab of the tractor. He revved the engine, the roar echoing off the glass buildings. He looked ridiculous. He looked magnificent. He's mine, I thought, pushing through the doors. He is absolutely, undeniably mine.